Welcome to the Dad Show Podcast, a show all about impacting, empowering, inspiring, and uplifting information to become a better dad, husband, man, and mentor. And now, your host, Ryan Ladd.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Dad Show. Today is a little bit different. It is a recording from another podcast that my wife Allie and I were on. It is with the Grove Church, Phillip Martin as the host, and it is Tales from the Other Side, Stories of Grace. In this podcast, we discuss about the Allie Ladd Foundation, how our kids were diagnosed, our testimony, and we also go through a few rabbit holes as well. So I hope you enjoy listening to the podcast today. I ask that you go and follow the Grove Church's page as well. They have podcasts, videos, sermons, and a few other things on there as well. So go give them a follow. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Have a blessed day. Thank you so much.
All right, welcome back to Tales from the Other Side, Stories of Grace. I got two good friends with me here today who have an incredible story of God's grace, some hardships, and just what God's doing in your life right now. And I'm so excited to have Allie and Ryan Ladd. And y'all got two wonderful kids, Kennedy and Lincoln. Yes. And you got a foundation, the Allie Ladd Foundation. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for letting us be here.
Yeah, man, for sure. Tell us a little bit, introduce yourself. For those that don't know, one of the things we talked about is awareness. We're trying to build awareness to the Allie Ladd Foundation. And if some of these folks are like me, they're listening, they know of the golf tournament. They've probably seen the logo somewhere, the T-shirts, y'all have got great merch. But they may not know everything about it. So take us on that journey. Tell us about the Allie Ladd Foundation.
Yeah. So I think even more than the Allie Ladd Foundation is to raise awareness for MPS 1. Yep. So our daughter was diagnosed with MPS 1 Hurler Syndrome when she was 9 months old, and MPS 1 stands for mucopolysaccharidosis.
Yes, it does. Yeah, no, I cannot.
And she had never been sick a day in her life. So when she was born, I had a normal pregnancy, normal delivery. And when she was about 3 months old, we had noticed just this little spot on her back. And it was kind of her lower back, but it was just really something only me and Ryan noticed.
Like a birthmark look kind of thing?
No, kind of like a bug bite.
Yeah, like
a bug bite.
Whenever as a baby, you grab them kind of the whole, as soon as you felt around her back, you could just feel just something wasn't.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a cyst. It is kind of hard to explain. And so we asked at 3 months, pediatrician said, nothing to worry about. We asked at 6 months, and he said, I took my mom with me to that appointment, and he said her muscles hadn't fully developed. Nothing to worry about. At 9 months, it had gotten like half the size of a softball. Whoa. And he really noticed if she hunched over or something.
And you guys are first-time parents at this moment. This is your first child, and you don't know what you don't know, right? So I guess you're kind of like a little naive at first, no, nothing to worry about. It's not developed. And then all of a sudden, you as a mom and dad instinct kick in and go, hang on just a second. Something's not right here.
Yeah. Right? And I have to mention that was probably the first, I'm going to say, God moment of the whole situation and story. So I was at work, and I work at the nuclear facility there in Oak Ridge. And
you're a firefighter, right? Yes,
sir. Yeah. And so I was on a job and had auditors with me. And, is this big, important to do for that aspect? And she calls, and she's like, I'm taking Kennedy to her appointment. I'll update you. And so a little bit later, she calls and she says, hey, he's sending us to East Tennessee Children's. I know you got something important going on. I'll contact you back and let you know an update. And I said, yeah, just keep me updated. I was focused on work and doing that. And I went back and I started going through the procedure, and God just was like, no, you need to go. You need to leave. And so I handed the paperwork. I said, sorry, guys, I got to get out of here. And
my daughter's headed to Children's.
Yeah. And so
you didn't know if it was going to be a routine deal or, life-changing, which it ultimately ends up being. But God said, dude, get up there with your wife and your daughter.
Be there, support. Yeah. And she had her mom with her. So, at first I was like, but no, as the dad, I was like, I have to be there.
Which I got to say, this is not what we're talking about. And on this podcast, we do chase rabbits, so I apologize. But I think you speak kind of to that. Like a lot of times as dad, we don't know, mom's got instincts Dads are just, we're along for the ride, trying not to screw nothing up. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But there are those moments where it's like, I need you to step up right here, and you need to go be with your wife, be with your daughter, be with your family, whatever.
Yes.
And there you are at
100%.
Children's Hospital.
Yep.
Okay. And then what happened?
Yeah. So I don't think my mom was with me at the pediatrician appointment from what I remember. But just so happened, my parents have been in the lumber business for 20 plus years, and we had Scanlon Lumber Company here locally. My parents were going through a divorce, and she had went and, my story is, gotten like an accounting degree. And so she was doing some bookkeeping and accounting for different doctors. And so I called her because one of her doctors was an emergency room doctor at East Tennessee Children's, and just said, hey, this is what's happening. They're sending us to East Tennessee Children's Hospital for, I think it was an ultrasound and
An X-ray.
X-ray. And so when she called him, he was able to get us a few more imaging set up. So again, that was another God moment, because for 20 something years, we've been in the lumber business, and why is my mom working for these random doctors?
Right.
And one being a pediatric doctor, or working in the pediatric field. And so he ended up, I think it was a CAT scan that he was able to get us. So we were there. They put her to sleep for the CAT scan, which was a nightmare. They couldn't get the IV in or something. I remember it being traumatic.
And she's less than a year old at this point.
She's 9 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And never been sick a day in her life. So we've never been to the hospital.
And at this point, you're just chasing something. Like, you don't even know what you're dealing with. You're just like, let's just see what this is.
Yep.
Like every parent does.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that day they said, essentially, it's not cancer.
They told us it was a gibbous. They said, we're not radiologists. We can't read the whole thing, but we can tell you it's not cancer. It's a gibbous. And that was all we got.
And a gibbous, for those of us that don't know what that is, what's a gibbous?
A gibbous, so, scoliosis is left to right of the spine, deformity of a kyphosis. A gibbous is a front to back deformity.
So it bows out kind of.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, I get what you're saying. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
And so they had told us that there. Then our pediatrician had called us and kind of said, it's a gibbous. Don't really know a lot of information. I'll get back to you. And me and Ryan were like, so excited. Is what's worse than cancer? We were so excited. Actually went to the Smoky Mountain Brewery and celebrated.
Yeah, why not?
And we thought everything was good. And then this doctor, I call him Dr. Chris. I don't know if he cares or not. I should probably ask him. So Dr. Chris called and he said, I think you need to make a genetics appointment. And still we're like, okay. Like, we talked to our pediatrician. He said that he would call us back and we'll go from there. And he's like, no, you need to call and make a genetic appointment. So the next day, I think our pediatrician called. He said, our office will call, get you a genetic appointment, kind of stand by. Talked to Dr. Chris again. He's like, you need to call and make a genetic appointment.
Like, do it now.
Yeah. I was like, okay. And so at the time, the only genetic doctor in Knoxville only took newborns. So somehow, I guess Dr. Chris, we got connected to Cincinnati Children's. Oh. And I called Cincinnati Children's. And during this time, just hearing people talk, it's going to be a few weeks and, it may not be quick. And when I called, the geneticist wasn't going to be there, but kind of this retiring person was willing to take us in. And she said she would see us the next week. So the next week we went to Cincinnati, and the appointment happened to be in Kentucky for some reason. But we saw the Cincinnati Children's geneticist. They asked us tons and tons of questions. And in the moment they brought up MPS, but she said, I'm really not sure. I mean, if you wouldn't have brought your husband, because there's some facial characteristics, we would have said, yeah, I think so more. But now that she does look like her dad, so we're going to do an EKG and an echo on her heart, and a murmur is kind of a symptom. And so they did that. They didn't see a murmur. And so they were kind of like, I don't know, we think it's MPS. They did the DNA. They swabbed all of our mouths, her cheeks. They did blood tests, and they gave us the packet. And
how were you all at this point? Were you okay? Nervous? Questioning?
We were, so when they brought up MPS, I remember Allie plain as day the next. So what's her quality of life been? And we go around and we kind of advocate and speak at some events and stuff of that nature. And a lot of it is medical doctors in the medical field, like how can we get this information to you on these, detrimental diagnosis and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, don't do what our doctor did initially whenever Allie asked the question, like, what's the quality of life? Because he just dropped his head and looked down and started shaking and said, non-existent.
Wow.
The quality of life is non-existent. And
I mean, what do you do with that as a parent?
I mean, what you would normally do for
just fall apart.
Fell apart. And me and
that was a
Allie
big moment in our story that I feel like the first time, I remember Ryan saying in that moment, we were crying and he was like, God, whatever your will is, you've given us the best 9 months of our life and we're going to do whatever it takes.
I think what's important as we think about this right here is like for 9 months, you're just new parents. 9 months before that, you're expectant parents, right? You're going through all those emotions. And I think for those that are not able to watch this or just listening to it and may or may not know you guys, I've met you in different social circles. I've heard a little bit about you, but you guys are some warriors. Like as a mom and a dad, I know that you all do the fighting for your kids, right? So sometimes it's like, what we're talking about, you just do what you do. Like you don't have an option. You go to the schools, you go advocate, you do that. But for people that are standing back looking, I'm in awe of you guys because it's incredible. But I think for most people, they don't understand these two warriors I'm talking to today. That had to be an earth-shattering moment. Like, time stops. What the heck? What are we going to do at this moment, right?
And, going on that, there never was, and, even like, spoiler alert, to now where we are today, but there's never been a time that, and obviously God put me with the right woman, because there's never been a time that we've said, what are we going to do? Like, just stop. There's, and sit there and sulk and cry and do everything. From that point of that 9-month appointment in Cincinnati of starting our whole journey, we have both been hitting the road, running together, bonding stronger together, and fighting for our kids and continuing to do what we need to do for our kids. There's never been that stop and just wait moment. We've just been hitting the road running since.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole fight and flight kind of deal, it's not just in physical fights, you know?
Exactly.
I'm a flight guy. I'm a screamer. I'll run every time. But I think that in moments that take your breath away, moments that are fence post moments is what I call them, like your life changes on this fence post. Like, this is it. You either fight or flight. There's a lot of people that just sit down, cross their arms and go, well, this is the way it is. But that's what you guys, we didn't have that. We jumped right in it and said, let's get to work. We can be sad for a minute, but Kennedy's dependent on us.
Honestly, at this point, actually going back and thinking about it, we didn't have the diagnosis. This was just what if. What is MPS?
In that moment,
what is her quality of life if she has MPS? There is no treatment option for MPS. There is no cure. But at this point, we're just in our initial appointment talking about if she has MPS. So they gave us a packet to leave with, and I said we're not going to open the packet unless we know. And so I didn't Google anything. I didn't open the packet. I was just...
Did you know what MPS was?
No, never
just
heard
other
of
than what
it.
they had told us.
Yeah.
But I mean, initially going for that appointment, no, never heard it before in our life. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking off air and I was sharing with you that one of my sons is type 1 diabetic, juvenile diabetes, which does not even compare to what you guys have gone through, but
Still a storm, man.
But it's a storm. But me and my wife, we didn't have a clue. Like, nobody had diabetes in our family. Yeah. I just knew they couldn't have sugar is what I thought. And I was way off. That's not true. It's carbs. So anyways, you don't know what you don't know.
No.
You don't know what you should be afraid of or whatever. So, all right. So you're finding out Hurler Syndrome possibility. Then what happens?
1 week from that appointment, they called and said, so one of the tests they take is a urine sample. And so they had the urine sample, and her GAG levels are high, which are glycosaminoglycogens.
Of course. Yes.
And so her GAGs were high. So that told them she had a type of MPS, but they did not know what type of MPS.
There's more than one type.
I think there's 11 types.
What?
And then within types, there's subtypes.
Oh, my word.
So we just knew we were headed in the right direction. I feel like that's what she told me. We're headed in the right direction.
We're about to figure out what's wrong with your baby.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the next week, they called and said she has MPS 1 Hurler Syndrome, which is the most severe form of MPS 1.
You're kidding. Of all the types and subtypes, you got the top one.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's the worst, but it's a blessing that it also has the best treatment option, which is a bone marrow transplant.
A lot of the other MPSs have no treatment option.
Kidding.
They're just
That's just
deteriorating.
What it is. Yeah. For those that are listening that doesn't know what Hurler syndrome is, MPS 1, describe it. Like what happens? What's the symptoms? What's going on here?
So in simple layman's terms, do you want to?
I can.
Okay.
So I was going to say in layman's terms, they do not have the recycle truck in their body. So the trash is just building up and accumulating. They can't break down a sugar molecule, which is the trash. And so that trash is just building. It's attacking their organs, their brain, their eyes, their bones, their everything. It affects every part of their body.
So it's almost like your body's revolting against itself in some ways. Can't break down sugars, can't break down this, so it attacks every
it's this
part
very
of your body.
sticky substance that's just building up.
Wow.
And so I guess going back to the initial appointment before we actually got the diagnosis, they did tell us you can do one of three things that is a treatment for this disease. One is do nothing, and we can tell you that your daughter's going to pass away between the ages of 5 to 10 years of age. The second one is a man-made enzyme, and so it's done by infusion. It'll may protect a little bit of the major organs and help dispose of this bad trash and sugars of the body, but it can't pass the blood-brain barrier. So basically all you're doing is prolonging until more in the teenage years, I guess. And then they said the best treatment option, which is the most, what's the word I'm looking for?
It was the only thing that could protect her cognitive ability. It was the only thing that could pass the blood-brain barrier.
Well, it's the, not the scariest.
More
What's
efficient.
the word?
More intense.
The mortality rate?
Yeah, it's, golly, what's the word?
It's just harsh. They have to go through extensive chemo.
Wow.
Most dangerous. It's the most dangerous one because of the possibility of passing away just from the bone marrow transplant.
Just from the treatment.
Yeah.
Yes, just from the treatment. That it was a 70% chance.
30%, of survival. 30% mortality rate.
Yeah.
So it's the riskiest option.
There's the word I'm looking for.
There it is.
Riskiest.
We just had to talk about it. We're getting older. We're dads.
Amen, for sure.
And I don't even know where my keys are. So,
but
risky.
they told us that, and that was the best treatment option for giving her the best quality of life during that first appointment. So
you're faced with three options. All of them are terrible.
exactly.
But you got to do something, right? When you say the blood-brain barrier, what do you mean?
I don't know if I'm good at explaining that.
It's
your cognitive
what
ability.
I hear, so like it would treat everything else, but it wasn't really treating or protecting your brain.
Yeah, and I don't want to say treat slows down the progression.
Yeah.
It allows them to make some amount of enzyme, but not 100% enzyme. So it's still a progressive disease, even with the best treatment.
Because the way I understand, and you correct this, okay? I'm just, based on my limited knowledge, there's no cure.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is stunt the progression of the disease until there is a cure.
Yeah.
But we can't fix what's already been damaged.
Right. You can't reestablish what's lost.
Yeah.
So we're protecting.
Yes.
Okay.
To
So
the best of our abilities.
Yep. And you guys are doing fantastic. How old is Kennedy
10.
today? 10?
10 years old.
Fantastic. 4th grade?
Yeah.
Ooh-wee. Yeah. And then Lincoln.
She's sassy.
Oh, yeah, I've seen her. I've met her. And she did not have time for me. She was on a mission. And your son, Lincoln, I've met him. Every time I've seen him, he's like on an adventure. Like he's going, like at the golf tournament, we're like, where's Lincoln? I was telling you, like, he's probably in the pool. And you know what? Y'all didn't even flinch. Like, he's probably in the pool. He's probably with someone. If he's not there, he's somewhere else. You know, like that's a veteran parent move. I love it.
Anytime anybody asks me about Lincoln, I say he's like a good dog. He'll be back in just a little bit. You know,
just let him
let him go, and he'll come back.
He'll come back. That's fantastic. So here we are. We've got, and we'll get to Lincoln in just a minute, because Kennedy kind of set this whole train running.
Yep.
So you find out all this. You're faced with the risky decision. Is that the one you chose?
Yes.
And what all went into that? How's that been?
Prayer went into that decision.
Yeah.
100%, because we left thinking like, but also knowing the fact that, you know, we might lose our daughter through this process if we choose this. But goes back to that first appointment. Like, God has blessed us with this beautiful baby girl that has been just the light of our eyes. And, you know, like being a first time dad, and, you know, you have that pride, and it's like, we can't not try to give her the best quality of life that we possibly would be doing. I feel like we would be doing a disjustice if we didn't give her the best quality of life. So we prayed, and that's the decision we finally rose upon.
You know, I would expect nothing less in just getting to know you guys. And I feel like over the next years or so, we're going to know each other even better. But just your job alone. I know you come from the lumber company side of the world. I don't know what all that entails. I've got a friend in Canada that owns a sawmill. So, I mean, you know.
There's a connection.
There it is. He also taps maple trees for syrup. So, anyways. Your whole job is in protecting people. You run into the fire when everybody else is running out. And so, literally, the fire is brought to your front porch. Yeah, in your daughter. I would expect nothing less. Not to mention, y'all are people of faith, believe in Jesus Christ and what he can do. And so, you got your daughter. You're looking at the odds, if you will, and, you know, you've had an experience where a doctor kind of just hung his head, and yet the Bible says, you know, with man this isn't possible, but with God all things are possible.
Amen. Yes.
Yeah, and so you step into the fire, and here we go. We're off and running.
Yep.
So take us from that point, Mama. How was it?
So I don't want to go down a rabbit hole.
Let's do it.
I want to go back to, I don't know that in the moment, like I'm sure I was praying, but I think it was definitely, you're like in the motions. Like, you have to believe that they are the expert and you're doing the best that you can. And really, we had been church hopping, and I had never really experienced anything tragic in my life. I still had my grandparents. I met my great grandparents. I had a great life. I was a spoiled brat here in Rome County, and we started church hopping. And Ryan, when we met and through our early marriage, was a partier. He was a DJ. He was out all the time. And
that's where that voice comes from. You can hear him. I mean, it's awesome.
So we had landed at Big Emery, and we got baptized. We rededicated our lives, and we were like, we're doing everything right. I went to college, then we got married, then we had kids. Like, we did it like we were supposed to.
In order, yeah.
And then it was like, as soon as we joined the church and we were living right, we felt like living right, trying to do right. It was like everything came crashing down. And there was truly moments where like, we were doing better living as sinners than we were doing the right thing.
Man, this is real talk. Like,
so that was really, really hard.
This is what people don't want to talk about when it comes to faith, right? Because faith is all about, I think a lot of times people think about all the good stuff, you know Jesus Christ, you prayed to receive him, you're born again, you got a place in heaven waiting on you. And then we're just spending time between salvation and eternity here on planet Earth, right? And as long as things go good, I mean, I can sing on Sunday mornings, I can get out of bed and say, you know what, maybe I'm not going this week, right? Whatever. And then all of a sudden we have these things what we call crisis of faith. Like, is this real or not? Like, am I on my own or not? Is this pointless or not?
Yeah.
And how did y'all handle that? Did it crush you?
I think Ryan was the rock. He was much better and still is to this day. Like,
really?
it's fine. It's all going to work out. Like, God is with us, and it's going to be fine. Why are you worried?
Now, this is interesting because, go ahead.
No, I was going to let you go ahead.
Well, in every other podcast that I've done with married couples about whatever it might be, and we've talked about several different things, it's always her that is the rock, and the guy is kind of like, I don't know, we'll figure it out, whatever she says, trying to work himself into it. But this one's reversed. And I've seen y'all speak a couple of times, like at the golf course. I would have never thought that because you're so confident when you speak. He's loud. Like he rattles my car windows when I pull in that parking lot. But you were the rock, and I think that's fantastic too.
I kind of want to. We can go down rabbit holes.
Sure.
And this is a rabbit hole, but it is probably my biggest testimony to this whole journey. Like Allie mentioned, I was a partier. I was a social drinker. I got baptized and saved at a young age and knew Jesus Christ as my Savior, but I never lived for him. I never lived my life for him, never done what I needed to do as a Christian and be his hands and feet. And so I'd go out, go to the golf course, go drink with the guys, she was an introvert. She didn't like to be around people. Like she said, I was a DJ. So I was going to weddings. I was going to private parties, doing everything and just, living my life as what I wanted to do, not, being accountable or anything. And the night after we left, the first appointment at East Tennessee Children's, we went to Smoky Mountain Brewery, and I told her sitting there, I said, after the day we've had, I need a beer. I need a drink. And so I had one beer and sat there and, relaxed, took the edge off a little bit. And then we left there and went to Target, one of Allie's favorite stores. And
got to go to Target.
I never will forget the doctor calling as we were walking out of Target, and our pediatrician, because we didn't see him after we left East Tennessee Children's. And he's like, it's a gibbous. We know it's a gibbous. And he's like, but don't go home and Google anything. And I remember asking him point blank, doctor, is my baby girl okay? Is she going to be all right? And his words were, I don't know. Just don't go home and Google it. And so from that point on, like God don't make deals. So I didn't make a deal with God at all. But I knew that whenever I drank, I was not the husband I needed to be. I was not the Christian I needed to be. Whether it was 1 beer, 2 beers, 10 beers, whatever.
It was never just 1 beer, by the way.
It was at Smoky Mountain Brewery. Remember, I had 1 beer. And
they kind of breed,
And so, but literally, I could, if you want to go out and you want to have a beer at the bar, I could go and set one, have 1 drink, and we'd leave and wouldn't think another. If you want to sit there and drink a case, let's sit there and drink a case. All right. So I called it a social drinker. Label it what you will, but
all I know, what I'm hearing is you were good at it.
Yes.
If there's one thing in life that I've been
I can do it.
Yeah. And so, like I said, God don't make deals. And I told God at that moment, I said, this is one thing I know that I sin at, not because, once you have a couple of drinks in you, then, a pretty girl walks by and then, one thing leads to another. And now you're talking and flirting and doing things that you shouldn't be doing as a married man. And so I told God, I was like, that's one thing that I sin at every time I do. Whether you heal my daughter here on earth or you heal her in heaven with you, I will never touch another drop of alcohol.
Wow.
And so that's not a deal. That's just a promise because I know what happens whenever I would drink. And so that is probably my biggest testimony to this whole thing. And I actually quit DJing, the whole DJing business, because being a sober guy around a bunch of drunks is not fun by any means.
Do that, yeah.
And so
you turned into a chaperone DJ.
Yeah, exactly.
But he did it for a while. He didn't quit DJing until 2017. And
Really?
it was hard for him to
get out of it. And which is crazy.
Do I have an opportunity for you? I know exactly the perfect place for you to DJ. We'll talk about it off there.
And so with that, I've started getting in the Word a little more, trying to become a newborn Christian, if you will, trying to walk in my Christian faith. I relate it back to a newborn baby deer trying to walk. I was stumbling everywhere. And so there was one guy at work that I really kind of just relied heavy on, and just a good, solid Christian man. And, we got the diagnosis, and finally he's like, Ryan, like, I know you're praying, I know you're trying, but there's going to be a time whenever you're not going to be able to pray. You're not going to be able to think of a prayer, but just know that God understands your prayers, or God understands your tears. And I said, dude, you're crazy. Like, no matter how hard I'm crying, I will always be able to, think in my head a prayer or just cry out. And one day it absolutely hit me. I was at home by myself, and I got to thinking about what Kendi was going to have to go through. And I couldn't do nothing but hit my knees and throw my hands up to Jesus. And once I did that, I was crying so hard that I couldn't think of anything. Couldn't. All I did was throw my hands up to Jesus. And when I did that, it was a huge, just like he reached down, picked it up off of me. I was able to stand back up, dry my eyes, and continue on. I don't even remember what I was doing. But whenever that happened and I felt that power of him pulling it off of me, I literally took the motion of like, she's yours. Ooh. You were her ultimate father. I'm here on earth just as her earthly father. She's yours first. I can't do anything with her. I need you to take her. Oh, and God. So strong. It's not been easy, but by doing that, and I did the same with Lincoln whenever he was born and we found out about his diagnosis, that allowed me to be that rock, because I knew Jesus was taking care of her no matter what. And I was able to be the rock that I needed to be for her. And, I say I was the rock, but there's times that I've broken down and been negative and just, cry. And then, Jesus reverses that role, and she's been my rock. And we've just, bounced off each other like a couple of rocks going down a pipe. But, I hate to go down that rabbit hole and tell the whole story, but that is by doing that. And anybody that asks me, like, how did you deal with it? Like, that's been my story, because that has allowed me to know that Jesus is taking care of her and try to be the rock that I need to be.
Just think about everything that you just said, because a lot of people that are going to hear this story for the first time or do know the story, people that are around, they may even say privately, before we came in here, we'd already done some recording earlier, and then I was doing kind of a load, kind of trying to tell me what I needed. I was looking at your website and just going back through. I knew most of that, but I just wanted to refresh. And the thought is I don't know how you do it, right? That's the natural thought. Like, I don't know how you do it. And what you're giving us is the insight to the behind the scenes of, this is how we've done it. This is how I did it. This is where I got to. Because I think with anything, and this is not to take away from Hurler Syndrome or anything that anybody's battling, but in order to see God move, you have to get to an end of yourself, right? There comes a point to where I'm done, I'm out, I don't have any more energy, I don't have any more answers, I don't have any more whatever to give this. And at that moment is when it's like, all right, Jesus, it's all yours. I mean, he loves your son and daughter more than you do. That's hard to imagine. Yeah. He created them. They were his first. That's hard to imagine. And ultimately, he's going to decide what the future is for them. That's hard to imagine. All of that. We're just riding, along, they're on loan to us, but that's hard to imagine. So when we come to that end, wow. So how did you do it?
So if people are still listening, the pieces do come together. So I'm glad he gave that backstory, and because that is kind of goes into ours too. So mine is, you guys, what do you not do? It's very nature just to keep doing so you don't have time to process. And there was so much going on, I really didn't have time to process. So he mentioned a bone marrow transplant. But the enzyme replacement therapy, we could start that immediately while they were waiting to find a donor to be Kendi's bone marrow donor. At the time, there was not enzyme replacement therapy set up locally. So we started driving to Cincinnati every week for a 6-hour infusion. So again, every week. So
For
we're
a
both
6-hour
still working.
infusion.
Yep. 6-hour infusion.
Holy smokes.
And so everything was just happening so fast. And then one night, our parents, unfortunately, both sides are divorced. And I'm an introvert, so I don't like texting 8 different people telling you the same story. And I just don't like telling my life. And so here we are.
Yeah, tell us more.
So we started a Facebook page. And it sounds crazy, but we woke up the next morning and there was over 1,000 followers.
What?
And we were like, this is crazy.
You about to get over that, not telling everybody your story.
And
stuff.
That was, it sounds crazy, but that was kind of like, people care, like we're not alone. Okay, here we go. And then the next thing we know, Oak Ridge Country Club was having a golf tournament for us. So this was in March, end of March when this was going on, and we got the diagnosis. Oak Ridge Country Club had planned a golf tournament in April. So they had 30 days. We got the call that they found a bone marrow donor, and we were moving May 4th, I believe, the first week in May. So everything's happening so fast.
You're moving like your house.
We have to go to Cincinnati. We have to move to Cincinnati.
You're moving to Cincinnati? I didn't know that.
So they say expect to be here 3 to 4 months. And so, yeah, we were moving to live in, because once you go inpatient for chemo, the prep, and the bone marrow transplant, you're living in the hospital, I guess 3 months is probably what you should plan for.
In the hospital.
In one room.
Oh my
That's what you should plan for. And so Oak Ridge Country Club had it. We had a date to move. And that day, there were different fundraisers going on. So we had a day at the time, Chick-fil-A would let you put your receipt in a bucket, and Chick-fil-A would donate, I don't know, 10%.
That was on May 4th.
That is right.
That was on May, because it was May the 4th.
May the 4th.
May the 4th be with you.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah.
And we were one of their biggest fundraisers. And then you had Oak Ridge Country Club. They raised $35,000.
Oak Ridge did?
Yes.
Holy smoke.
So that was at the point for me, because those are the things you're worried about. Like if I'm going to leave, we still have all of our bills here, our current
How
bills.
You gonna pay for stuff.
Now we have to have a different house in Cincinnati, or a different place to live in Cincinnati. I'm obviously can't work. I'm going to have to leave my job. And so how are we going to do this? And so even though it doesn't all go back to financials, it's that he's going to provide. God is going to provide. I mean, and to see $35,000, I mean, at that time, that was almost my salary. So it was like, okay, that's a huge weight lifted. And so the people, the community just rallied around us so hard. I mean, and I am from Rockwood and he is from Harriman. We didn't know each other growing up. And so I think that just helped too. You know, we just knew different sets of people. Yeah. And people just loved us so well. And that was our support. And it wasn't until we got into the hospital, somebody had given me Jesus Calling. And I started reading Jesus Calling. And it was simple enough that I didn't have to like try to interpret. I could just open it up on the date. And it would have something, it would have a passage. And every time it was kind of like, wow, that's what I needed for the day. And so I would we did an update every day. And on Kennedy's board, I would post whatever the Bible verse was of Jesus Calling. And so I think that's what it was for me. That was the first time that I was like, he has been the rock. But it was that I got to see with my own eyes and feel everything's going to be okay.
You know, one of the things I talk to people about is like Jesus, he knows how to speak our language, right? As a father, as a mother, you know how to speak to your kids different ways. I don't know how you talk to Lincoln, how you talk to Kennedy. I can tell you my house is different. Like, I've got a youngest, Memphis. I got triplet boys that just turned 20 today, and then I got a daughter. The way I talk to my daughter is completely different than the way I talk to them boys. And those older boys will tell you it's different than the way I talk to my youngest son. They say I need to whip him more is what they say.
Baby.
He is the baby. Yes, he is. And he knows it. But I say all that to say, as a father and my wife as a mother, we know how to communicate with our kids. What works with one won't work with the other. I think the same thing is spiritually. God knew what your husband needed. God knew what you needed. Where your mind was is like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to pay for this? Whatever it might be. And God goes, here you go, Allie. Bam, bam, bam. And you're like, okay. And then for you, it's over there kind of getting to a place to like, listen, man to man, I'm not going to do this anymore. Whether you do what you do, I know I need to clean up my act for whatever reason, and I give her to you, right? Those are two different conversations, but the same kind of outcome of strength. So we get to that point, and this story goes on. I mean, just so many unbelievable moments, breakthroughs, and those kind of things. Kind of really fast forwarding. How is Kennedy today? You've gone through Cincinnati. You've been there. We've got to talk about Lincoln too. He comes into play here. Like we've been talking about him, and we ain't introduced everybody to him yet.
So Kennedy's stay was long. She had 2 bone marrow transplants, almost had 3. So we lived in the hospital for 111 days and lived in Cincinnati for 9 months. And so when we moved back, everything was getting to be normal, whatever normal is for us. TMI, but I had breastfed, pumped for her the whole time during all this. So for 2 years, so I'm not breastfeeding anymore. She's potty trained. Like we're getting ready for life.
This is it.
And then I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, let's go. Yes.
We didn't plan on having any more kids. But here we are.
He wasn't a mistake. He was a blessing.
Well, I've told I just told you I have 5. Of 5, only 1 was planned.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The first one showed up. And brought 2 friends with him, and we were completely done. Like I'm good. When you have 3 in one day, you're like, we're good. We had an instant family, and we survived it. Wow. And then my daughter came along. We were not expecting, and then my youngest, he's 11. So there's quite a bit of years between them. We're still in
Illinois. Finally found out what caused that. Is that what?
Yeah, we bought a TV. I got cable. So, anyways, that's when life happens. Like God goes, He just blesses you, right? And you weren't expecting Lincoln, and here he comes.
Yeah, and that was really hard. I think I still have her voicemail on my phone because when she called, I didn't answer because I knew. So
That's
Lincoln was born May 4th of 2017. And in 2017, MPS 1 was not on newborn screening in Tennessee. So we got the diagnosis because we had the paperwork with us to have him tested. So it is a genetic disease. Ryan and I are both carriers. You have a 25% chance, once you're both carriers, to have an affected child. So
it's rare to be a carrier too. So
yeah, that's what I'm like.
I asked the geneticist if she was my sister. Really, to be honest with you.
we really
are
did.
from East
like,
Tennessee,
if
right?
we were related.
And her own county. So
I can say that because I am from around here too. So yeah, I mean this.
So we got
far from Alabama.
So we got his diagnosis 2 weeks from the day he was born. We could have tested in utero, but we didn't because the only thing you could do really is terminate at that time. And we weren't going to do that. And I didn't want the worry the whole time. And I truly thought how could God do this to me again? Like, that can't happen twice.
No way, right?
Yeah, they can't happen twice.
25% chance.
And so actually the day Lincoln was born, he failed his hearing test. And that was my first. I broke down. Of course, everybody's like, he just failed a hearing test. I'm like, I knew then. But I was still hopeful actually, because Lincoln just looked different. He didn't look affected to me. I was very hopeful, and we got that call 2 weeks later, and I remember in the garage just bawling, what are we going to do? I can't do this because they're immune suppressed, so I couldn't take Kennedy with me, and I've just fought for her life for a year, and now I'm going to have to leave my daughter to save my son, and I'm literally crying, and Ryan's like, we're going to do it. It's fine. It's all going to work out. Like he was literally saying it's going to be okay. And I'm like, how is this going to be okay? And so that was very, very, the next few months were traumatic because so you want to treat them the sooner the better. But since the chemo is so harsh, they wanted Lincoln's liver to develop a little bit more so it could handle all the toxins of the chemo. So we waited until Lincoln was like 3.5 months old to have his bone marrow transplant. So we're just loving on him, experiencing life during that time, trying to be with Kennedy. And going back into the hospital was the hardest thing I've ever done, going into registration. Because with Kennedy, we didn't know what to expect. We're just trusting everybody. You're just going through the motions, believing that it's really not that bad.
It's the first time.
But now we've experienced it.
Yeah.
And I've lived in these walls for 111 days. And my daughter has been immune suppressed. So we couldn't have visitors. You know, we lived COVID before COVID happened.
Yeah, you were isolated. Whoa.
And so then now I have a germy 2.5-year-old. And so that was even harder for me because I didn't want her to touch him. I didn't want her to get him sick. I was so crazy. It was making me crazy.
Well, they didn't want us coming to the hospital. So whenever we went through with Kennedy, we had an apartment in Cincinnati, and that's where we stayed, where we had to be close, and then got rid of it. Well, we got the same apartment complex whenever we went back with Lincoln. And so the doctors didn't want me and Kennedy at the hospital because, you know, obviously kids are germy, and then I'd been around Kennedy. And so here, kind of secluded in the hospital is Allie and Lincoln, and I'm at the apartment away from my other half and my newborn son, you know, taking care of, you know, I love spending time with my daughter, but I wanted us all be together as a family. And so that was really tough to be so close, but yet so far away.
And separated. And I mean, golly.
And hard on Kennedy too.
Yeah,
During that time, she was traveling back and forth with Ryan. She couldn't live with me at that time. She developed a stutter.
Oh, really?
And then when she moved back in with me in the apartment, it just completely went away. So it was just the stress on her body, things that you don't recognize, but that's how it came out of a 3-year-old was
she missed her mom.
Stutter.
She needed her mom.
Yeah.
She loved her dad.
I think that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
she loves her daddy.
Yeah. But she needed her mama too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Lincoln got discharged. He only stayed at 60-ish days in the hospital. I don't really remember his time. So we lived in the hospital for 60 days with him. And then we moved into the 1-bedroom apartment. Kennedy came up and lived with us. But Lincoln's time after was a lot harder than Kennedy.
Really?
We got readmitted quite a few times, dealt with a lot of after transplant issues. He had some skin issues. So we were just in and out of the hospital trying different treatments, different infusions. I started driving back to Cincinnati with Lincoln for an experimental infusion. We drove back every week for I don't know how long. And that's when we kind of got introduced to Minnesota. So Minnesota is kind of a center of excellence for Hurler Syndrome. There's actually a gene therapy trial going on there right now that could potentially replace the bone marrow transplant, and you wouldn't have as many side effects, but it would allow them to produce the enzyme. So we started seeing Minnesota, and they did a skin biopsy on Lincoln, and we found out at the time one of our issues was GVH, graft versus host disease, where his body is fighting his donor cells. And they decided that it wasn't graft versus host. They put us on a different regimen, and his skin cleared up, and we've been rolling ever since.
Really?
Yep.
Oh,
and
no.
so
That's awesome.
Yes, it was.
So life was great. Really, after that, we were in the honeymoon phase, is what we call it. Every family goes through a honeymoon phase.
Everything kind of settles down. You kind of find your sweet spot a little bit.
For a little bit. And then Kennedy had the gibbous. So she's at 80 degrees in her gibbous. So at 7 years old, Kennedy had 2 rods and 13 screws placed in her back.
Oh, my word.
Yep. So this was so Lincoln, well, let me go back to Lincoln. So he had his bone marrow transplant in 2017, and he had all these issues. So we were still isolated. So as Lincoln gets released to be normal, whatever normal is, COVID hits.
Oh, my Lord.
So,
yeah,
which was normal for us. But we freaked out more than other people because we didn't know how it was going to affect our kids, because airways is one of their issues, and their heart, some different things.
With all the respiratory and all the stuff that's being tied to COVID at the time, I would imagine it was a major panic moment.
Yes. Wow. So it's important to bring up the surgery because, yes, I think that's a misconception. She's had the treatment. They've had bone marrow transplants. They're good. Why are you still raising money? Why are you still raising awareness? But it's a life of hospital stays. It's a life of, there is no book. Every kid is different. Like, a lot of the kids have carpal tunnel, and they have, what are some other prominent things?
A lot of them have hip issues. A lot of them have knee issues, spine issues.
Mobility issues, enlarged livers, enlarged spleens, heart issues.
Corneal clouding with eyes and vision. And
so most of Kennedy's
transplants.
Wow. And I think that's the thing, like today is we're talking the awareness of this is it would be one thing if we're just talking about you guys, right? But there's so many other families. That was something that we were talking about earlier. There's so many other families that are suffering from this rare disease, or the subsets or whatever it is, the rare disease that people don't even realize. Yeah. And they don't realize that the story that you just told is unusual to a lot of these listeners, but there's a whole nother segment of people that this is not unusual. They're like, let me tell you what we had to do.
Yeah.
Right. And most of us can't relate. Like, I can't relate to that. Like, I can relate to a family whose son had strep throat and everybody had to stay home for 3 days. I can relate to that. I can relate to chicken pox as a child. I can relate to those things. But what you just described, the journey you just took us on, I can't relate to that. Like, as a husband, as a dad, I just can't.
We say over and over, one thing that got us through that we hadn't talked about is that once you get into an international hospital like Cincinnati Children's and you walk the halls, you quickly see somebody always has it worse off than you. And so even though it was very, very hard, you would see daily, at least my child can say mama, or my child is standing up in the crib, or we have this community that's rallied around us, because there were babies on our floor that didn't even have their parents going through bone marrow transplant with them, whether they had to work, whether they didn't have parents, whatever that might be. And so really we say it all the time, like, the community is so much of our story, and so many of even our friends that have MPS 1, they don't have that. And it is, we want to give them that, because it's, even with the community, it's so isolating and it's so hard for people to comprehend. But just to feel that love, and somebody showing up at your door with a meal, or somebody just sending that text message saying, hey, I just happened to be thinking about you today. And I'm not always the best to write back, but I remember that. I remember.
You know, I honestly, I love where we live. I love, and yes, I'm a transplant. I was born and raised in Loudoun County, which is right down Highway 70, right past you, so it was a long way away. But even in crossing that county line into Harriman, Rockwood, Kingston, even our own counties divided by cities.
Yeah.
But one thing that we do well here, and I wish the world could experience it, is we love each other well within this community.
Yes.
Yeah. That's been my experience. And for a testimony to that is, like, when we do go to your golf tournament or your wiffle ball tournament or whatever, dude, these guys show up and show out. Like, they're there. I don't even know if anybody cares who wins the tournaments. You know, sometimes I don't know if everybody's honest, but anyways, some of the most incredible golf has happened at the Kennedy Ladd Foundation golf tournament. But that's the point. The point is, we're there for you guys. We're there for your kids, and not even everybody even knows everybody. You know, we got friends that drive in from Nashville just to play, but it's because we want to love on you guys the best way we know how. And I think that's the thing, is, like, if everybody could experience that, and that's what you guys are doing. Well, that's what Kennedy Ladd Foundation is really doing, and bring it to the forefront. So, real quickly, as we wrap up our podcast today, because we're talkers. I don't know if y'all realize that. We are talkers.
So much more to say.
And there's so much to tell. And we want you to click and share this with everybody. Get it out there. Please. We want it to go everywhere. Even if you don't know anybody's ever had this, send it to somebody else, and then you send it on. But tell me about the Kennedy Ladd Foundation. What are you guys doing to bring awareness? With
awareness comes a cure. And so I've started saying we're hope dealers. And so hope
dealers.
Is
I like it.
Helping one person every day is what hope stands for. And it's really how the wiffle ball started. We didn't want Rockwood, Harriman, and Kingston to be divided. We wanted the community to come together where everybody was welcome. Everybody could participate. And it was just a day that they came together and was like, that was a great day, but we could also raise awareness. And so last year we had 15 MPS families come.
Whoa.
And that was special. And so that has grown, and that has what has lit our fire as well, because a lot of these families haven't met another MPS family. And so once they get together and these kids get to see somebody like them, or somebody that walks the way they do, or uses a walker like they do, or whatever it might be, it's changed lives. It's special. It brings them hope. And we don't have a cure. We're dreaming of a cure, but we know that hope is the best medicine that we have right now.
Now, I know you said cure 2025. Are we're still hoping for 2025?
I'm believing in the only
our
things
prayer,
God can do.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And so we all need to be praying that way.
Yes.
And as you are dealing out hope and bringing these families, I think that's awesome too. Like you mentioned something, like I said, we can't relate to certain things. And these families that are on their own, you're bringing them into that same community to say, hey, let's all connect. And there's something really special that God does when he takes moms of, Hurler Syndrome kids, and they can talk. You can share your experience, you can shut the door and go, yeah, they're all telling me, they love me and care for me, but you've lived it, That's a whole different conversation. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think what you're doing with that by inviting those folks in is unbelievable. Like, I love that. Yeah. And we were talking earlier too, y'all are actually giving people who are going through what you're going through, and their children are going through what your children are going through, an opportunity to tell their story. Right. And I think, is that on y'all's Facebook page?
It is. It's a new project that's launching in October, starting October 1. October 7th. Is that correct? Basically, we're sending out a video crew to interview and video these families, and they will be featured through the Allie Ladd Foundation on this new project. It's called the Cure MPS 1 Project. So they're featured every month. They'll have their own donation page that people can go and donate in honor of them and for, to raise awareness, to find better treatment options, to fund a cure through the Allie Ladd Foundation. So these families, it gives them an avenue to be able to raise money without having to go and fund starting a nonprofit organization and stuff of that nature. And they still will have designation and ownership of where that money goes. We can't just take it and do what we want to with it.
Sure.
They'll still have that opportunity to say, that's a project we want to fund, or no, that's not. We want to hold back and wait. And so it just gives them, because there's a bunch of, I'm sure everybody knows, just a legwork and red tape and everything else that goes through nonprofit organizations. And
fun, ain't it?
Yeah, exactly.
If you have an opportunity to do it, don't. No, just kidding. I mean, if somebody else is already doing it, join them where, that's what Henry Blackby said. Find out where God's moving and go there. This is one of those opportunities for families. Don't recreate the wheel. There's power in numbers. Let's get together.
Amen.
And let's go wear this thing out,
I agree.
And let me ask you this. Is there anything else you'd like for people to know before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, that's a hard question.
There's a lot, but
Here's what I would
Everybody's
say.
going through something.
So
as simple as being kind.
Yes.
Do what?
I said everybody's going through something as simple as being kind.
Yeah, just be kind.
So I do want to just touch on real fast, and I promise I won't be long,
No,
that
be however you want.
the Allie Ladd Foundation was grown because of the community that you talked about. Allie and I had this, not burden on us, but just this fire that we had been, because through Kennedy's stuff, we had never asked anybody at all, will you have a fundraiser for us? These people went out by themselves, done bake sales, done golf tournaments, done T-shirt sales, done everything that was done. We never asked one person, will you raise money for us? They went out and took it upon themselves to do that. So Allie and I, at the end of this, were, we'd moved back. We got in that honeymoon phase, obviously honeymoon phase because Lincoln was born, but was, just we have a blessing. We have been so blessed through this whole journey by our community, by our church, by family, by people around the world that we didn't even know that God just put in our lives. We cannot hold on to this. We have to pass it along couldn't go to each person and say, here's your money back. Thank you for donating. Here's your money. We could not do that. So the only way we knew to do it was start a foundation to try. And if we can't save our kids, our motto was that we're going to try and keep somebody else from having to go through what we've had to go through. And so that's how the Allie Ladd Foundation was born. So I just want to say that if you feel a fire in you to go do something for somebody, or you feel God putting it heavy on your heart, go do it, because you never know how much that means.
You
never
never know
family.
where it's going to go.
Exactly.
And how it's going to change lives. Allie, and you're just the way you're brave as a mom, the way you hold yourself, the grace that you have in all this, I can't imagine. Just in encouraging others,
Thank you.
and living for your son and your daughter. And Ryan, just the heartbeat that you have, man. Just in the midst of all this, I cannot imagine the days that you all have had, and yet you sit here and you smile and you're hopeful, not only for each other, but you deal out hope for others. And that is a testimony in and of itself. And the people have loved you, this community that's loved you. You guys are rocks, and your children are fantastic. And we know God is up to some incredible things. We're going to see some of those cures come through for these boys and girls. I just know it. Because you guys have ran back into that fire when everybody else may have ran out, right? I want to encourage everybody who's listening to this, go to, and what's y'all's website? Is it
KennedyLadd.org.
KennedyLadd.org. You can go, you can see their story, you can see pictures of this beautiful family, you can donate, you can get involved, whatever it might be. Go check them out today and listen to their story, pass it along, just repost this. We want people to hear this, pass it around. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so
Right.
much.
See you guys later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast. Please like, review, and subscribe.